exist. As the proverb says, tomorrow never comes. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now.
Welcome to the Philosophical Minds Podcast, the podcast about the stuff we wonder about.
And other things.
All right, my guest tonight is a ceremonial alchemist, a medicine woman, apothecary farmer, herbal spagyricist, kinesthesiologist, and caretaker of the land, hailing from the Bundjalung Nation, Australia, Danielle Cutri. Danielle, welcome.
Thanks so much.
So,
Beautiful intro.
thank you. I've been looking forward to this and allowing you to just, your mercurial tongue to flow and speak its passion for the people. So yeah, wow, wherever you're living is just absolutely like a heavenly vibe. How long have you been in that spot for?
Yeah, I've actually just moved up here a few months ago. This is absolutely the most beautiful place I've ever experienced. It's up in the mountains on the Bundjalung land in the Northern Rivers, Australia, and it's deep in the rainforest and just absolutely just stunning. And I just feel so held by Mother here, and yeah, very grateful. So yeah, just been a couple of months now.
Yeah, and you appear to live like a very kind of pure life in the sense of your environment, like the food you eat, your lifestyle. Like working with the plants from the soil to the table, you're like making facial tinctures, microbiological operations going on with like blue oyster mushrooms, making your own medicinal gummies and shit, all kinds of goodness. You seem to have kind of like an aesthetic. Do you have like any design background by any chance?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, it feels like a past life now. But before I deep dived into the world of alchemy and herbalism, I was a photographer and artist for almost a decade. And yeah, I found myself here now, but it's very much still a big part of my life.
Oh, that's really cool. I wanted to ask you about your
of nature.
Yeah, definitely. I was curious about your cross tattoo on your wrist, and is there any significance to that by any chance?
It was the first tattoo I ever got when I think I was about 19. To be honest with you, I just wanted to know what it felt like to get a tattoo at the time. And I was in a very weird space with understanding spirituality and religion and going through that, I guess, know thyself, coming home to what are my beliefs, all of these things. And I grew up in a very Catholic Italian family, and it was just more a representation of that. And it's funny because since going down the alchemical pathway, I now understand deeper the meaning of the cross and different things. And so it's kind of evolved, but yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because it's just the start of my journey really into the expansion of the alchemy of soul and the alchemy of self, I guess.
Definitely. What would you say is your current understanding of the meaning of the cross as opposed to what you thought it was before?
For me, at the crossing of the worlds, really, the upper, middle, and lower worlds. I think that's a very, very probably long conversation to get into. But I think when you look at alchemical symbolism and all of that, yeah, really, it's just the crossing over of the realms where everything intersects in the center, in the middle, and that's it really.
I love that. Yeah. So in one of your posts that I really enjoyed, I think you'd put out like about a year ago or so, And you were kind of mirroring some beautiful points along the lines that a friend of mine, Sienna, was recently driving at as well. um, the notion of kind of like moving beyond sustainable into the realm of like regenerative practices. And so
Generation.
I was hoping you could kind of maybe expand on the concept of regeneration a little bit, and like what that means and how it can kind of be utilized, just for the betterment of all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we focus, there's a lot of focus at the moment, I find, on sustainability, which to sustain means to continue at a level that we already are, to sustain something, to keep it as it is, as to not degrade, rather than what, for me anyway, looking at, like I say, you know, I grew up on a farm, and very heavy agricultural practices that were revolved around using a lot of chemicals, sprays, pesticides, glyphosates, things like this. And so I got firsthand insight into what happens when you farm in these ways. And I was very passionate about it from a very young age. Like you said, I have, everyone who knows me knows that I have a very mercurial tongue, and like to understand things very deeply and speak out about them. So I took it upon myself to really delve into this world. And Dr. Zach Bush is actually someone who talks about this extensively, who's amazing. But the world can't sustain itself the way that it's going in terms of agricultural practices. And I think that we need to be looking at how we can actually regenerate the soil, and get back those microbes, and looking at carbon sequestering, and really replenishing what we've done, and the destructive ways that we've actually been using these chemicals and these agricultural ways, and having more animals on the land and grazing animals. And I think it's a really hot topic at the moment that's kind of coming up, and something that's going to be really in the spotlight over the next couple of years in terms of large scale. How can we sustain this amount of people that we have on this earth, if we are, wanting to actually have plants, medicine, food that isn't devoid of nutrients. There's one thing to have something in your hands that you can eat, and it has, it has fats and proteins and carbs and things like that, but we're looking at the micronutrients that we are stripping from the soil, and that's the medicine. How can we look at ways to sustain the future of humans on this earth, and actually give back to the land and give back to the soil, so that we can keep producing and have medicine within the plants? It's
I love that. Also, I'm loving seeing this sort of like emerging reclamation occurring right now in terms of like individual sovereignty or self-sufficiency, and kind of getting back to like the idea of developing useful real world skills. Like I love video games and
I'm
movies
so
and
into that right
technology.
now.
Right, yeah. And I love like all the great technologies and whatnot that are available, and I'm super fucking addicted to my phone. But we really need to emphasize like maintaining our connection with the land and the earth. And that's why I love, just your overall way of being. And like as the days go by, more and more I'm more drawn to people like yourself, or people who are just doing things like in beneficial ways. And whether that's gardening or ethically hunting their own food, or making medicines, or just doing their part and providing, or trading with their communities, or creating offerings in their own way, and doing things in a way with like quality in mind. And I think that's what sets up long-term success versus like short-term satisfaction. But anyway,
I think it's really important.
absolutely. So are you yourself, are you seeing this kind of emergence as well in Australia? I don't know if you have like a biased perspective because you live in such a heavenly spot and you're probably surrounded by people just like that, but maybe you're aware, I don't know, of the city cultures around you and whatnot. Are they becoming more kind of tuned into that kind of stuff, or?
I think they are. I think we're getting there slowly. It's been a strange couple of years with COVID, but I think with what's been happening, there's been a lot of people moving in Australia from the big cities to rural and more remote areas like myself, where there is very conscious and connected community who are all very like-minded. And it's addictive once you start. You put that first seed in the ground and you see it grow and you reap the rewards, and you feel that, you feel Mother Nature, you feel this goddess energy coming through everything that you do, and you actually give back to the land as a steward of the land here, and you reap the rewards. It's addictive. It's so beautiful. And to be in a community, I think it's definitely something, that we have community markets here, and everybody that you speak to are all kind of doing the same thing. We have, people who are, fermenting, and people who are, consciously raising animals or growing large scale, medicine crops and apothecary farming and all of these things. And so, yeah, it's been really good to see such a large amount of people leaving the cities and looking for this kind of lifestyle. And I think that it's more of a remembering as well. There's so much of ancestral remembering that comes through once you start doing this work. I said I grew up on a farm, and then I left for 10 years and went into the arts. And the last thing I wanted to do was put my hands in the soil. But there came a point where I think for a lot of us, we wake up one day and we go, what is it that is important to me? And yeah, the moment you start getting your hands dirty and you have animals on the land, and you're waking up with the sound of the birds and the sunrise and just the misty rain over the mountaintops, and the stillness that happens inside. It's not only about how can I sustain my own health and wellness, but it's just become so much bigger than that. It's a very hearted way of living, and it's really beautiful.
And you're definitely doing things with quality in mind. I can see, wild, organically, detailed things like bottling with Myron glass. I want to talk a little bit about Yantra botanicals and how that kind of all came into being.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I was in the arts for a long time, and I think there was something missing for me. I've always been interested in plants and all of the weird and wonderful happenings there. I think I told you Terence McKenna is one of my favorite. He speaks about things, and so I went into sciences and did the typical thing. I studied herbalism and kinesiology and science, and I had a really strong intellectual understanding of these things. But in the herbal world, there's this term called armchair herbalist, which is that you can be textbook perfect and you can know what a plant does, how, very allopathic, how can this plant help you? And that's great. But there was always something missing. For me, I found that receiving, when I was making up teas or things for clients, you would receive, a kilo of a herb, nettle, for example, in the mail, and it'd be grown overseas and picked there and handled by 100 people before it actually got to you, and then it was repackaged again. And there was something in terms of energetics that was missing for me, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I decided that I was going to start growing my own plants and see whether anything shifted. And this was before I actually got into alchemy. I was more just a practicing herbalist and kinesiologist with a love for gardening. And I'll never forget, the first time I grew medicine and was able to harvest it, and how different it was with the energetics of the finished result, making a spagyric or making an alchemical tincture from something that you've grown from seed, harvested under the alignment, the sun or the moon or whichever planet is, ruled by this plant, and from start to finish having this beautiful medicine. It was a real game changer for me. And then going deeper into that, having transference of energy that came through in strange thought forms or waves that I still can't explain. When you say you talk to plants, it's not commonly a commonly accepted thing, but it's very much true. We have such a deep connection to nature that transcends time and space, that can be tapped into. And that's what I found when I started getting into alchemy and developing yantra. And it came from spending day in, day out, morning and night, working on the land and putting my hands in the soil. And in that silence came these waves of information telling me, this is what you need to do. And I would kind of, look around and be like, I don't understand. I don't know anything about what these things were telling me. For example, spagyrics is, to separate and recombine. And I was wondering one day, pondering on how can I take these herbs and increase the potency. And I had this feeling come through me that I need to take it apart and then put it back together. And I was like, what does this mean? This is crazy. Who's telling me this? I don't understand. And that was my gate to the realms of mystery and magic, and understanding that there are things far beyond our comprehension that we can understand. And when we listen, when we truly learn to listen and feel and sense, it doesn't matter how much intellectual textbook knowledge we have. The shamans have always known this, that it's through receiving and opening our heart and really feeling what the plant is trying to give us. And I'm not just talking about, the psychedelic medicine, everyday plant medicine. Each plant has an entity, a spirit within it, and it experiences itself through us. And so, that was my turning point, really understanding that these plants had a message for us. And it was that was it from there. Yantra began, and I started growing all of my herbs as much as I could anyway, where I was able to at the time, and getting very weird and wonderful with all of the experimentation through alchemy. And just realizing that for me, everything I do with yantra has to be from that heart-centered place, from a place of being in service to the plants, rather than how can this plant help someone. It's like, how can I help this plant express itself in its divine nature, to live out its own dharma. So it's a long explanation, but it's hard to explain these things, because it's something that is felt rather than intellectualized. So
I was going to ask about, like, how long have you been into herbalism and wildcrafting and farming, and in particular, how did you originally become acquainted with, like, spagyria? It sounds kind of like you had some insight initially from those experiences. Did it come through in other ways as well, or? Curious.
I think my path with alchemy and herbalism and spagyrics does transcend time and space. I think I've been doing this for many lifetimes. Like I said, it's hard to really articulate in words, because a lot of what happens in this world, and I think a lot of people who go into the world of alchemy can attest that there's not much logic involved or rationale in this. It's very much a remembering. A lot of us have done this many, many times before, and that's kind of what it was for me. When I was a child, growing up on the farm, I was convinced without a doubt that I was able to communicate with inanimate objects, plants, trees, rocks. And I would sit there and I would speak to them and say, I know you can hear me. It's okay. You can talk to me. And now I understand that they're not inanimate and they are, in fact, quite animate, quite alive. And so when I got older, I think I've always been interested in plants. It's part of who I am. It's always been inside me. I was led back there. I think psilocybin is, I have a very intimate relationship with the fungi kingdom and with other very beautiful plant teachers here as well. But aside from that, working with the plants, even just ingesting them through tinctures and teas and things, before I was even in the herbal world, I was able to receive information from them that just led me down this path. I resisted this for a very long time. It's not something that you go, I'm going to go into this business, I'm going to make a lot of money and it's going to be so successful. And it's just not like that. It's weird and it's quirky and it's there's nothing about it that has any kind of stability to it, in that, when you look at, the reality that we grow up thinking that we're supposed to have. There was a lot of resistance, but I was led there. Every single moment from the moment that I was born up until now has led me back home to this place. And it's not anything that can, really be explained in words. It's just, I was certainly led. I was led back here, and there was probably little things along the way that would lead me left or right along the yellow brick road of, oh, you're going this way. No, maybe try this and maybe try this. And it was just all, it was all intuition guiding me and surrendering over and over again to the humility that it takes to actually walk this path, because you have to look at yourself so deeply to do this work. You can't go down the path of alchemy without calcinating and burning yourself to the ground like the phoenix and rising again, looking at all of those parts of yourself that need to be left behind in order to do the work. This has got nothing to do with me whatsoever. Like I said, I'm in service to the plans. I have to toss that humility aside, and whatever baggage that I'm holding, I need to just leave it at the door and just trust that spirit will show me why I'm doing this, and just continue to lead by intuition. I love looking at the alchemical model of alchemy of soul, as above, so below, as within, so without. So anything that we do in this life is a reflection of the work that we're doing. And it's not just in the lab, I'm going to take this plant and I'm going to mix it with this and set it on fire and do all these things. And great, here's some medicine, here you go, take it, be on your way. It's just not that simple. You have to, whatever you're doing, you need to do, to yourself as well. With yourself, you need to be willing to set those things on fire and just go with the flow.
Yeah, you're definitely a passionate woman, and I love that because you direct it wisely. And it seems like you have it in your nature, obviously. I think it's beautifully illustrated in something I was reading in your earlier years. You were writing letters to local agricultural companies in regards to the horrors of the various insecticides or fungicides. I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I have no idea what drove me to do that. I was probably between 10 and 13 years old. I just always have had a fire in my belly. I always wanted to protect this great mother. We are so blessed to be here. I never understood why we would want to destroy her. I would see these big planes, crop dusters going through the air. Like I said, I was on a farm and it was a very rural area in Australia. So there's not much out there. So, you'd see these huge planes flying over with these big orange clouds spraying out the back of them that would look like a dust storm. I don't know if you get the big dust storms there, but it basically just fills the sky and you can't see a meter in front of you. And these systemic fungicides and pesticides would land on absolutely everything inside. And it just hurt me. And yeah, I didn't have the understanding at the time to really know why it affected me so much. And like I said, everything that I do now is, I still don't understand it. It comes from the heart. It comes from a place of deep feeling rather than deep knowing. But I just knew that I was put here to speak up and use my voice. I didn't necessarily have to know all of the answers, but I just knew that something had to be done about it. And so, yeah, I would sit there and I would write letters to the local chemical companies telling them, it's such a small fry in the big sea, as if they would care. But, you've got to do something. You've got to do something when when you see these things done. But yeah, that was quite funny. That was quite funny. I never got a reply from any of them. But,
No, nothing.
It made me feel like I was doing something.
That's funny.
Yeah.
If I could maybe I could ask you to talk a bit about your experiences and thoughts on different fungi plants or plant medicines that you've built a connection with. One in particular I find interesting, Wachuma or San Pedro cactus. From my understanding, it's a very heart-opening experience as it contains like the psychoactive entheogen compound mescaline. And I was listening to Aubrey Marcus recently. He was discussing a bit about it in a podcast with Ben Greenfield, and he was talking about some civilization back in the day, and I think it was like the Chavin culture in Peru. Or like the earliest developed culture, I guess. And he was talking about like the 800 years that went by in the Chavin culture, where there was essentially zero warfare, because like any pilgrims or people that would come in, they would offer them the wachuma kind of as a gift, and they would do these big ceremonies, and just fucking amazing. But I'm curious, your experience and your relationship with San Pedro and any of your thoughts about it.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, I haven't had as much exposure, I guess, to wachuma. I do grow a lot of these plant medicines. We have some beautiful cacti growing outside, as well as some ayahuasca and other plants. But yeah, from what I know, is that each of these plants hold their own sacred medicine, going back to this, I guess, spirit or entity that each one of them contains. And yeah, I love Aubrey Marcus as well, and the way that he really articulates his experiences with these medicines, and how each of these medicines has their own way of expressing the medicine from within of what they want us to know and experience, so that we can then continue to live peacefully and within, on this earth, and how we can extend that out. So yeah, look, I'm not too familiar with wachuma in that way. So, fungi medicine is probably more my area, but I do find it very interesting the way that you can take certain medicines like ayahuasca and psilocybin, for example, which are chemically almost identical, very similar, just like with a slight little tweak, and you've got two very different medicines. One, ayahuasca, is deeply rooted around, the rivers and the streams and the trees and Mama Earth, and this beautiful goddess that, we live within her womb, and it's very much experiencing that grandmother energy and flowing through. And then you take a big enough dose of psilocybin, which is, like I said, chemically almost the same, but then you're working in the realms of entities and, cosmic. You can it's trans-dimensional in a sense that you very much feel the presence and the spirit of these two very bold and strong medicines, each having their own teachings that they very much are just so lovingly wanting us to know and to hand over and us to experience. But yes, so very different. And then you can take something like DMT, which, from acacia plants, and then something like 5-MeO DMT, which is toad medicine, Bufo alvarius, which again, somewhat chemically the same, but you're looking at completely different realms of dimensional realms of the places that you're able to go and the lessons you're able to take back. The DMT is again in this, it's different for everybody, but you can be, jumping densities and dimensions and talking to mantis beings and who knows, and accessing Akashic records, and you can feel her. It's anyone who experiences these medicines knows that it's the presence is there. It flows through every vibrating atom and cell of your body. You can feel them. And then, toad medicine, which is from animal medicine, is very different. That takes you straight to source. That takes you straight to this, whatever you want to call it, God, source, spirit, goddess. They want to make their presence known, and for me it's quite phenomenal how we as humans, I think that we have the tendency to judge sentience by our own, or relative to our own level of consciousness, rather than looking at that these plants, with all of the wisdom and knowledge that they hold, they're not more or less intelligent. They live in different realms and different densities or dimensions than us, and we just need to shift our perspective a little bit, rather than trying to understand it from our level of intelligence and saying, oh well, they can't speak, they can't talk and communicate with us in the way that we can, so therefore they're not intelligent. I think accessing these beautiful medicines, you really understand that there is so much more to our level of understanding and a greater intelligence that I feel is trying to make its way through. So that was a very long answer.
Absolutely.
But I think that these medicines are beings from other worlds that are just
Wow. I think
really
this
beautiful.
this particular like facet of society that holds this notion of the demonization of psychoactive substances, or the kind of like puritanical idea of total and utter restriction from these things as a viable means of achieving homeostasis biologically as well as mentally, is just preposterous, and is even potentially to the detriment of one's overall life quality. And not only that, I think it's lazy and it's ignorant, because I believe that it's kind of like this thoughtless mentality, what's kind of responsible for a lot of the issues of our world today. So many of these various plant medicines have extensive traditions and extensive cultural understandings about their nature and how they can aid or assist humanity and uplift or heal, whether it's with processing traumas, breaking addictive behavioral cycles, treating pathologies at the root, and on and on. And the irony being that it can be a very sobering experience. And, just for anyone to judge and hold a prejudice in that regard is just very sad. But often I think it's just mostly due to confusion or a lack of understanding or respect for proper ways of approaching particular medicines, as well as maybe like indoctrination and programming and so on. But that's why I like to do, what I do, and have people on like yourself to kind of reveal their real world testimonials and experiences. And But anyway,
Yeah,
so I
I
wanted to ask.
appreciate it. It's yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that, there is a lot of fear in society around these things, and um, so psychoactive plants aside, even just working with your everyday plants and medicines, it allows us to have these experiences of, it's almost like waking up in the dream, and it can be scary. I think that that's a big part of this. It's our unwillingness to look at what's really going on within and accessing the shadow sides. Like I said, these plants, you can work with, I've got mugwort in front of me right here. This is a little ally, but just everyday plant medicine, like mugwort and reishi mushroom, or medicinal mushrooms that allow us to go between the upper, middle, and lower realms and look at the deep places within ourselves and look at the shadow aspects of ourselves and really bring it to light. And it makes us do the deep work to, really evolve as people and as humans and within our consciousness. And that's scary. We live in a society that, of a fast culture, and we're always looking for escapes. And like, I completely understand. I've been there. Like I said, it takes a lot of going deep within and burning a lot of these old behavioral patterns to really look at these things. But yeah, psychoactive plants aside, I think that this plant kingdom, and not even edible plants, just going outside and putting your feet on the earth and actually feeling the transmissions that are coming through, can be deeply, deeply healing and life-changing for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, psychoactive or not, what are some of what are some plants or some herbs that you kind of have a really good relationship with, and that you would say has kind of informed your life in a positive direction in any way, shape, or form that you just really enjoy to bring up?
Yeah, mugwort. Mama Mugwort, she's one of my greatest plant allies in this journey. She allows us to open the five senses and to really learn how to deeply tap in and communicate with what's going on around us. And like I said, receive these transmissions. She is the dream weaver, the weaver of realms, cosmic mother. Yeah, it's very interesting. She's known as the witch's herb. She's been used by druids and people throughout centuries to access different transdimensional places through waking realms and dream realms. So I find mugwort a very interesting, just everyday common herb to work with. In the fungi kingdom, I would have to say reishi mushroom. I've been doing a reishi sadhana for the last month, which has been really wonderful. And reishi is one who likes to go into, and you think of the mycelium, like the mushroom kingdom, the mycelium, the tapestry, the nervous system that holds everything together. It kind of goes through all of the systems and the networks and finds exactly where it needs to go. And it's like the spider that weaves everything together. And the lessons of reishi is that she will show you over and over and over again the same lessons until you learn them and integrate them, because integration is, for me, more, well, if not as important or more important than the journey itself, or the lessons itself, if we can't integrate something. So reishi is a very, very deep, beautiful mushroom to work with, which is just an everyday medicinal mushroom. And what else is there? I would say probably tulsi. Tulsi is holy basil. Tulsi is, one of my one of the first plants that really opened my heart. And she acts without asking for anything in return. She wants us to deeply feel into our bodies and come. She's an adaptogenic herb, which means that if we're too high up or too far down, there's this real equilibrium and real, balancing herb, but she knows how to weave her way through all of the places into our body and bring us back to center without asking anything in return, and really allows us to sit back and watch as she does it and review all of the ways in which we lost ourselves along the way, and picks up the pieces for us, gives us a warm blanket and a cup of tea and says it's all going to be okay. So they're probably my top 3.
I'm with you on the Tulsi. I have a kind of similar situation going on with that for sure. That's a very special plant indeed. I thought that you would be a cool, interesting person to ask about your thoughts on death. Once the body gives out or our souls leave our bodies, what are your thoughts? What happens? Do you subscribe to reincarnation? Do we ascend to a higher order being, into some heavenly plane? Is it different for everybody? What are your thoughts on all that?
Sure. Yeah, I can only attest to my own experiences and I guess within my own reality and perception, but I believe that we are all eternal beings. I think that we all of, cosmic origin, and I think that we all transcend time and space, and we are here in this incarnation at this time on earth for a reason. And I truly believe that we are eternal. I think that when the body dies, the spirit, like in alchemy, you've got, the sulfur, the mercury, and the salt, the different aspects of every living thing. It's the same with humans. We have a spirit, which is eternal, the soul, which is unique to us, and the body that we reside in temporarily, which can be, the one day will decompose and decay, but it doesn't mean that, that animate part of ourself won't live on. It's all, whether you want to say it's recycled, whether it's, reincarnation. I just believe that, our spirit and our soul is, very eternal. And we chose to be here, you and I and all of us, to do this work for whatever reason, or just to experience, to live the human experience, to experience love and joy and everything that this has to offer. But I truly believe that when we die, that's not it. We will, whether we choose to have another solar spin and reincarnation in this on this earth, or if we choose to go elsewhere, I think that it is very much eternal. I've not been one to really dwell or think too much about death, to be honest. I think that the path in alchemy has really helped me to release all of those fears, which is a hard thing because we live, we're conditioned to live our life. We live till we die. We've got to do this grind and live this life and get all the things done and live this grandeur story and storyline, and when in the illusion of time as well. But now that the illusion of time and waking up in the dream and the senses, the veils have lifted, I now see that while I do feel this very strong Dharma here and this purpose here, I know that all of us, all we need to do is be and exist and just be in harmony and accord with nature, and that one day, we will die and we will be eternal and always live on. So it's beautiful because it takes a lot of the fear away, and it means that during our lifetime we can choose to dance on this earth and dance in the liminal realms, and not be afraid to experience all that it has to offer.
Amen to that. I think that that's a lot of another big kind of important aspect of what certain medicinal plant compounds can help a lot of people, not everybody, but at least I could speak from my own experience. As far as the fear of death goes, I think it can really kind of alleviate that in a very powerful way. So that's cool that you brought that up. So let's see, I wanted to go back to something that you'd mentioned earlier in regards to carbon sequestering. Could you elaborate on what exactly that is, what that means?
So we're looking at carbon dioxide in the air and the ways that over the last, how many hundreds of years our agricultural practices have began to degrade the soil, especially since the introduction of, chemical agriculture and things like this, and especially large scale monocropping of certain plants. And the increase in carbon dioxide in the air. So carbon sequestering would be using regenerative practices to replenish the soil, and using things like cattle and animals to actually, we need animals shitting on the land. That's pretty much what it is. That breaks down into the soil, that creates, the oxygen that gets recycled. It's like this. It's nature's way of healing itself, basically, is sequestering carbon, through natural means. And I think I'm really excited about it. I think that there's, I'm still really learning a lot more about it, but there's a documentary actually that came out recently on Netflix, which is love to mention. It's absolutely fantastic, all about regenerative farming practices. I think it's called Kiss the Ground. Have you seen that? Yeah, it's
No, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Kiss the Ground, Kiss the Soil. It's absolutely fantastic, but that goes into a lot more detail about how it actually works. It's very, there's a lot of science behind it, so I can't really sit and relay the information of exactly how it works, but it's basically nature's way of correcting the damages that we've done, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I really look forward to seeing a future where we are incorporating, rather than absolutely abolishing the factory farming and the large-scale commercial production of meat and monocropped and heavily sprayed produce, and getting back to farming in smaller communities. And we can absolutely feed the world. We just need to, actually look at the ways that we're doing these practices, and having a lot more local communities and farmers and people adopting these practices, and all working together with the one outcome in mind, rather than for greed or profit, which is primarily how things are still run at the moment, which is unfortunate. But I think that to sustain the world, to regenerate the world, this is definitely the way that we're going. So.
Definitely. So there was a cool post that I saw you posted about, it was like, I don't know, you had like bananas and coffee grinds or something, and you're fermenting them in water. Is that what it, banana and coffee grinds, that combination, and you just let it sit for a week or something, and it you could use that as kind of like a soil addition? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
Natural fertilizers and things like this. So if you get some banana peels and put them in a bucket and let them rot, they'll ferment, or just put them in a jar with some water. So you're going to be leaching out things like potassium and phosphorus and things like that. So you're basically, it's part of biodynamics as well. I've only just kind of started to get into biodynamics, but I think it's really interesting. So just using composting methods and recycling our waste to leach out minerals and compounds and all these beautiful alkaloids and things from the waste products into the water, and then using them to water our plants. It's kind of, it's the coffee grinds are, got some great things in them. I use them to feed my worms, and in my worm farm, I'm very excited about my worm farm, and then using that to water the plants.
You were talking about, what was it? Something about the worms release some kind of, what was it? Like natural pesticides too? Was that something that you were talking about?
The worm tea, which is I love my worms. So the worms basically,
Go ahead.
I'm not so sure about, they could do. I'm not so sure whether it's natural pesticides or fungicides or something, but yeah, it's very heavily rich fertilizer. So yeah, instead of going and buying a fertilizer, you can use the worm tea, which is basically composting tea that they poo and they wee, and then you get this big bucket of beautiful nutrients that they've churned out from all of the scraps that you give them. And it's incredibly concentrated black liquid, which you dilute, and it's, yeah, very, very potent fertilizer for the garden. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the simple things. Like I eat a lot of bananas and I drink a lot of coffee. So, just something like that. It's so simple that many people can do that we just don't really think about. At least, I mean, I don't really think about. But fermentation is kind of like a blind spot for me, I guess. But so is it something where if you were to do it, is it something where you'd seal the jar, or do you let it be breathable, or what about like that aspect of it?
I don't think too much about it generally, to be quite honest with you. I just throw things into a bucket or throw it into a jar and give it a shake every day and let nature take its course. Generally, after about 2 or 3 weeks, you can kind of start to see, if you close the lid on the jar, it's gonna pop off pretty quickly. So every day you give it a shake and just open the lid a little bit and let some air in, so that it doesn't get too much gas in there and pop off. But it's all trial and error, really. Like I said, I've spent a lot of years researching and educating myself in these things, but until you actually start doing it, it's all trial and error, and it's all a process of remembering. And our ancestors have been doing fermentation and all of these things for a very long time, and it all kind of just comes very naturally once we start delving into these areas. And yeah, there's so many things that you can do with repurposing food scraps. Like, you can get eggshells and grind them down into a powder and use that as a calcium supplement for the plants. I've been getting bamboo at one point, the shells off bamboo up in the forest. We have a lot of bamboo that grows really, really quickly. And had a dream one night that the soil was lacking in silica and all these other minerals, and that I had to make a homeopathic remedy to to help out the plants. And I was like, oh, okay, well, how am I gonna, I'm up in the forest here, I don't really want to go and buy things to try and help this. What can I do? Oh, bamboo, it's incredibly high in silica. What's going to happen if I soak that in a bucket and ferment it and let it rot and make a remedy out of it? And you know what? It seemed to work. The plant seemed pretty happy. So it's all, I think this is the fun of it, is that there's no right and wrong. And the plants they're always really just happy for us to be interacting with them and actually care about seeing them thrive and flourish and have that two-way dance between us and the plants. So look, there's no right and wrong with all of it. You soon figure it out when you've got your ferments blowing their tops off because of too much gas and things like that. So it's all a game of fun, weird science.
It's just let nature guide your way.
Yeah.
In that sense. So who are some of your greatest kind of overall teachers or inspirations along your whole path with just herbalism, alchemy, life in general? Who are some of your greatest inspirations?
Yeah, I think I've already mentioned, of course, the great Terence McKenna. He's certainly one that was probably a lot of my path or my gateway into looking at plant spirit medicine and understanding that, again, psychoactive aside, everyday plants, that, oh, okay, we're not just looking at static objects here that grow with sun and light and everything, that there's an animation to them. There's the way that he speaks about them has very much inspired me and gave me the confidence, I think, to speak more openly about this area. So there's still probably 50% of the population that doesn't even believe that this stuff exists, and that magic is real, and that the mystery exists. So Terence McKenna is absolutely out of this world, transdimensional, guy. So yeah, I love the way that he speaks about um, the way that plants are alive and they have consciousness, and that they're teaching us, and they come from other worlds, and that they are intelligent, and not to judge them based on our perception of intelligence and what we believe is intelligence, which is I think really, really beautiful. What else? I would say another person, Yaya Erin Rivera Merriman from Active Culture Family. She's been someone who's been on my radar for quite a few years now. If check her out on Instagram. She also has a Patreon, which is Library of Earth Magic, which I just find her absolutely fascinating, really, the way that she speaks about plants. She has a way of articulating herself that really I've never heard anyone speak about the plants this way before. It comes from a place that is really, again, very heart-centered, very, very cosmic, very tapped in and tuned in. And she's really one to watch. She's doing some incredible things. So she's been a huge person on my path. And then, of course, people like Paul Stamets and, all the weird mushroom guys. And, there's a lot of them. But probably Yaya and good old Terrence is my favorite. People at the moment.
Awesome. Well, are there any last messages or anything you just want to say in general to put out there to the listeners? Anything you want? Go ahead.
I actually have a quote here before I do say that. There's a quote that I would love to read if I can, from Terence McKenna. It's one of my favorites.
Please do.
Okay. Nature loves courage. You make the commitment, and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream, and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering that it is a feather bed. That's by Terence McKenna. So that one always really puts me back in my place in the grand scheme of things.
Definitely.
I think it's beautiful, But I guess what I would really like to leave on is that no matter where you are, I think one of the best ways that we can, connect to this great goddess, of this beautiful mother, is just go outside. And it's, it's so cliche, but put your feet on the earth and really just don't expect anything. I think that we hold a lot of expectation a lot with when we try and, what are we going to get from this? We want to be healed or to be free or to have all of these things, but sometimes it's enough to just be. And I think that one of the most healing things that we can do is go and sit outside and sit with this mother and receive the transmissions and feel through our heart, listen, feel, sense, touch what's coming through. What are the lessons that she's trying to send through to us? When you're having a cup of tea, if you're taking a tincture, sit with the plant, sit with the medicine, ask it, talk to it. What are you trying to speak through me? These plants are somewhat living their own experience through us. They become alive through us ingesting them or sitting with them. That's how they live their dharma, is through us, and we are giving them the experience to live that out by working with them in this way. So really sit with that. And if you are interested in having a deeper connection with the plants, and talk to them, ask them. They get really excited. They've been waiting for a long time for us to to interact with them in this way. And there's some really profoundly deep healing that can take place, not for anyone else, but just for our own personal journey here. letting go and surrendering, and yeah, living our life fully, free of fear and all of these things. And they're here to walk with us as our allies, if we will allow them. So yeah, that's probably all I'll say. Yeah.
You're a beautiful soul inside and out, and I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do this with me tonight. So is there any place where you would direct people to find you if they were interested in learning more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account, which is Yantra Botanicals. And I also have a personal account, which is more in my everyday, where I post more, cute pictures of plants, and as I do, which is just at Danielle Cutri. And you can find the links to my website there, where I have a lot of the alchemical and spagyric tinctures on there, and a little bit more background into, the alchemy side of things and the philosophy behind all of that. So yeah, I'd love for people to reach out. I love to have a talk, as you can tell. So yeah, please, I'd love for people to, if they're curious about learning more, to come and have a chat with me. So yeah.
Beautiful. All right, well, until next time.
So much, and yeah, green blessings.